Julian Mantle was brilliant. He was hard, handsome, and a fearless trial attorney. He was tough and hard driving and willing to work at least 18 hours a day for the success that he believed was his destiny. It was obvious that he came from money, and there were enormous expectations weighing on his Armani-clad shoulders. He ran his own race and determined to do things his own way. Now, Julian's outrageous courtroom theatrics regularly made the front pages of the newspapers. The rich and famous flocked to his side when they were in need of his services. And that was the services of a superb legal tactician with an aggressive edge. Of course, his extracurricular activities were well known as well, and you can imagine what those were. But he could never be wrong. It was his way or the highway. However, beneath this hard, crusty exterior was a person who clearly cared about others. He became enormously successful in his time. He had everything, accumulated everything anybody could want. He had his own law firm, with a stellar professional reputation. He had an income in the 7 figures, a spectacular mansion, a summer home on a tropical island that he owned, the island that is, and his prized possession, a shiny red Ferrari. And that prized possession is, I'm sure, the reason for the title of this book, which is The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Now, the story is narrated by a junior lawyer in the law firm, John, who considered Julian to be his best friend. Perhaps it was because John spent so much time with Julian that they were really close. And being really close, he was able to observe what was going on with Julian, and he saw signs of impending doom. It was as if Julian was driving himself deeper and deeper into the ground, like he had a death wish or something. Nothing satisfied him. And eventually, as you can imagine, his marriage failed. He no longer spoke with his father. And though he had every material possession anyone could want, it wasn't enough. Still, he had not found whatever it was that he was looking for. And it showed physically, emotionally, and spiritually. At 53 years of age, Julian looked as if he was in his late 70s, at least. His face was a mass of wrinkles, and he had become embarrassingly overweight. He constantly complained that he was sick and tired of being sick and tired. He lost his sense of humor and never seemed to laugh anymore. He no longer seemed to be the legal genius that he'd always been. And then, sure enough, one Monday morning, right in the middle of his favorite courtroom, he had a massive heart attack. The brilliant Julian Mantle came face to face with his own mortality. In the hospital, his doctor gave him an ultimatum: give up the law or give up your life. It's one or the other. In the hospital and beyond, Julian cut himself off from everybody. He wouldn't even let John, who he was so close to, come talk to him or visit him. He wouldn't allow any visitors. By later that week, he had left his law firm, and then he went home and sold everything that he had, his house, his airplane, his home, and even, yes, his beloved red Ferrari. He put what little bit he still had at the end of all this in a backpack and headed off to India, which he had heard was a mystical, magical, holy place. He went there to get some answers, to sort out what he was going to do with his life and where he had missed the mark. He needed to be balanced and healed, and he went in search of all that was holy. He knew he had to rekindle the inner fire that he had known as a young man. So early in his trip to India, he sought out many well-known and highly respected teachers. Each of them welcomed him and shared with him the wisdom that they had. He visited ancient temples and absorbed their beauty, and he felt like he was standing in the middle of the sacredness of his surrounding, which of course he was. But all of this wasn't enough. It wasn't answering his questions. It wasn't giving him the wisdom that he knew he needed to heal and to go on with his life. Eventually, on his journey, he met a man named Yogi Krishnan, who, in talking to him, he discovered that Yogi Krishnan was a lawyer like him, had been a hotshot lawyer in New Delhi, and who left that job in search also of the holy and what gave his life meaning. And for once, he started feeling like here was someone that understood him and his needs, had walked the walk, and could give him some answers. Krishnan told Julian, "I was tired of living my life like it was one long air raid drill. I realized that my mission was to serve others and to somehow contribute to making this world a better place. And now I live to give. I spend my days and my nights in this temple. I serve those in need. I'm simply a man who has found his soul." Julian was thrilled. Here was someone who could help him. But Krishnan told him he was happy to do that, to try to share his wisdom with him. But before he did that, there was something he thought Julian might be interested in doing, was probably interested in doing. And he told him about hearing about a band of sages way up in the Himalayas. And these sages had the reputation of being very wise. And Krishnan said, "I am too old to go on that journey, but you can do it for me and then come back." So Julian was thrilled. And yet he knew that the trip to the people that the local people called the great sages of Shivna they were believed to be enlightened people And so Julian sets out. Something inside him tells him that he needs to make this journey alone. Well, as you can imagine, a trip up the Himalayas, even with a guide, is really tough. And so, but he sets out all by himself. And soon, the villages down below get smaller and smaller and smaller until they're just a dot, and then nothing at all. And he keeps climbing, and he doesn't see anybody for a week. And so he doesn't know whether he's on the right path or not. But he's just so motivated to find inner harmony and lasting peace and wisdom that this burning desire keeps him going. And then all of a sudden he sees somebody out of the corner of his eye. And this somebody is dressed very different than he would expect. He was in a flowing robe and he had a hood of a different color. And Julian couldn't see his face because his face was way back in this, sorry, I realize you may not be hearing me, was way back in this hood. And he introduced himself to the sage and told him about his life and where he was headed, who he was looking for, that he was looking for these great sages who might be able to help him, and asked if perhaps this man was one of those sages. And he said, yes, I am. And he said, congratulations on your tenacity. You must have been a very good lawyer, because it takes a lot of tenacity to come up these mountains in search of us. And yes, we would be happy to welcome you into our temple. Our brothers and sisters would gladly share our wisdom and our knowledge with you under one circumstance. And that is, first, you must agree that once you have learned from us the secrets of joy and strength and purpose and wisdom, you must agree to carry those back home where you came from and teach the people there, because though we are isolated here in these magical mountains, we are aware of the turmoil your world is in. Good people are losing their way. You must give them the hope that they deserve and give them the tools that they need. Well, of course, Julian agreed to these terms, and they continued on for several hours, walking to this village with a feeling of brotherly love that he hadn't experienced for a very long time. Well, in this story then, 3 years later, the story takes up in John's office. Remember John, the lawyer, who had been brought into the firm as a junior lawyer. So Julian appears in John's office, and what John sees is somebody who looks like they're in their 30s and vibrantly healthy, and above all, have this incredible sense of peace about him. And John looks, he doesn't recognize this person. And he looks, and Julian says, John, don't you know me? And he said, are you John? Are you Julian? And he said, yes, I am. And John was just amazed at the changes that he had seen in Julian. Well, our gospel today is in a lot of ways the story of Julian and the great sages in reverse. That is, Jesus, who would be the great sages in the story, go to the people instead of expecting the people to come to them. Jesus walks to the villages and takes the wisdom and healing and wholeness to the people of the villages who are lost. They're like people, like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus taught and modeled for them life-work balance. We hear a lot about that today, especially among the younger of our groups who are learning that how important it is, some of them anyway, to balance their life and their work. So in the Gospels, in the 4 Gospels, Jesus' ministry is divided into 3 categories: preaching, teaching, and healing. And a lot of the Gospels are taken up with healing stories. A woman who wrote, named Bridget Meehan, who wrote Healing Power of Prayer, said, as Jesus healed people who were sick in mind and body, he gave a clear sign by word and action of that the power of God had broken through into the world. In fact, Jesus frequently emphasized that his healing ministry was a sign that the reign of God was breaking forth. Some people that have written about these stories or about the Gospels, that have studied the Gospels, say that Jesus's healing is really a kind of an example of his teaching. And yet, the way we understand it is it's not. It's a separate ministry that is particularly special because it is the reign of God breaking in. We can't heal others by ourselves, but God can, and in a way, God reaches down and touches all of us, especially in our times of need. Health in Jesus' time meant not only a healthy body, but it meant life itself. It meant blessedness, holiness, and maturity. Life, blessedness, holiness, and maturity. So, you know, in other words, health is about us being whole. And of course, that's not only physical, but emotional and spiritual as well. These were the things that Julian had lost. He was at great risk of losing his life altogether, and he had lost his sense of blessedness and holiness in his life. He lost his connection to his spirit. And of course, when we do that, because those things are all so closely combined, our body, mind, and spirit, when one gets off track, the others do as well. So Jesus went from village to village, healing, touching, raising up these people who had lost their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health. And he started with his own disciples and taught them that the most important part of any ministry was making sure you yourself are healthy and whole and able to bring to others teaching, preaching, and healing. So Jesus took them aside, or tried to, put them in a boat and sent them across, hoping that they would be able to have time to eat and rest and pray. And of course, we know what happened. The people were so hungry for that teaching, preaching, and healing that they were there waiting, and the sick were on mats. And so they didn't get their rest, But Jesus himself often modeled going away to pray, going away to be alone, to be with God, to rest, to be replenished. Here we are in the middle of summer. I can't believe it. Seems like it just started. But this is our time, traditionally, to go away, to be refreshed, to get connected with our spirit, as well as our family, our friends, all those things that give us health and wholeness. And even today, we have the people on vacation and the people that are off at St. Paul's family camp, which now seems like it's gone on forever. I don't know, anybody know how long ago it started? 40 or 45 years? I don't know, a long time ago. So it's very much a tradition. So we've lost a fair number of our people today, but they're off doing what Jesus wanted them to do in terms of resting and finding wholeness and healing. And so for all of us here, just a reminder to take time to play, take time to rest, take time to heal from overwork or fractured wholeness or disconnection of the body, mind, and spirit, anyone from the others. Go in peace, go in wholeness, go in health.